And it was a history of like, I think it was about the Catholic concept of purgatory. And so she's going through all these like brothers, nuns, sisters, mothers of the church, of the Catholic Church, experiencing like, what they would call divine interactions or angelic interactions. I agree.
But I got you on this tangent because you were talking about Gnosticism.
I got
you off that. Sorry. Yeah. Continue on that.
No, I don't know. I think well, I guess we were going back to the kind of alien thing. Like, are aliens like at all? Do they have to do with religion? I think the easy, cynical like way to like write off religion is like, oh yeah, like they've been like messing with us and like causing like holy wars, but like really they just want the bloodshed or whatever. They're like mining us for like bad vibes. In the case of like Robert Monroe's like had this concept of, he studied consciousness in Virginia or whatever, and he had this idea of loosh and like these negative entities mining loosh. How would you do that at scale? Through like manufacturing wars or whatever. I think it's easy to like get into that like line of thinking. And then I think there's maybe another interesting line of thinking that's like, religion can be this like really cool kind of initiation path. And there's actually like a lot of truth in religion. And it's so easy to like dismiss the Bible out of hand, but actually it's like this. And if you read like both the Old Testament and the New Testament, like these are profound texts.
Oh, yeah.
They're like so fascinating.
Yes.
And they're texts I think you get something different out of depending on the level of like that you're at. And so it's important to like, I think, revisit these things. And
yeah, you make a good point. There's definitely a level of truth that exists within there. And look, there's human error, there's passed down stories, there's things that are written hundreds of years later, there's translations that are translated fucking 12 different ways that get confusing. But it's called the greatest book ever written because there's something at the core of humanity that exists in there. Now, like, you can separate out all these things. You can separate the history of it versus what might be more fable and fairy tale. You can separate out the religion and maybe the power structures that took advantage of that and continue to take advantage of it for not good things. And you can separate out the piece of religion that brings a lot of people something awesome in their life where, I always say this, with these organized religions, most of the people who are a part of it, it's used for positive in their life. And it's a great thing. It's a small percentage of people that use it for power or domination over others, or no, I say this, so fuck you and whatever you think. And unfortunately, that's what gets attention. But like, you can separate all these ideas and realize it's complicated. It gets weird when you look at it through the more esoteric sense and you see some of the things within there where, kind of like what Diana Walsh Pasulka looks at, where it's like, wait a second, is there like some code in here that means some things that we don't, which that we didn't previously understand? Like that topic is so fascinating to me because you don't like with a book that holy, the people who put it together, it's almost like there's something coming to them. There's these ideas or knowledge, secrets from the universe that maybe have been passed down enough that there's still that kernel of truth there. But obviously, like you were saying, you really got into Diana's book, and I think you described her as like a great white buffalo of coming on your show. And what just for people out there who aren't familiar with her work, you started to go into it, but what is she really getting at vis-a-vis UFOs and religion?
Yeah. Well, she made this really interesting insight. So her first book was called Heaven Can Wait. I believe it was published in 2014. And it was a history of like, I think it was about the Catholic concept of purgatory. And so she's going through all these like brothers, nuns, sisters, mothers of the church, of the Catholic Church, experiencing like, what they would call divine interactions or angelic interactions. And in many cases it was like, she was basically, so she knows Greek and Latin. She's a classicist. And she was going back to the original translation, not just taking kind of prima facie at face value, the, kind of modernization translations of, the way these things have kind of like, it's a game of telephone, and so like now it's written as like, angel or demon or God or whatever. But she was going back to the original translations and she was seeing orbs and discs and like all sorts of paranormal stuff that really pattern matches to like, if you read John Mack's books on abductions or whatever, or like any of the modern kind of alien stuff, like it was like a 1-to-1 match. And so I think a light bulb went off in her head, or I think she even sent a lot of this stuff to her friend, and her friend was like, this reads like a Steven Spielberg script. Like, this is great. This is like really paranormal. And a light bulb went off in her head where she was like, oh my God, like maybe this is the same thing that's going on now. And, maybe this is still, we're still living in the reality that the Bible is. And that's why I think in some ways the whole alien conversation is not subversive and upending of religion. It's reinforcing of religion. You become this biblical literalist, and you actually move from this like garden variety, like I'm going to go to church because it's a Pascal's wager and I don't want to go to hell, into like I actually am starting to believe in the metaphysical truth of this, and I think the world we live in is actually expanded. Maybe there is this interstitial thing with angels and demons, and I want to be on the right side of history. I want to like lead a good life myself, and not end up
right
in the bad side. And I think that's like a very powerful, profound thing to like think you're like swimming in the soup of good and evil. That'll pop anybody out of their nihilism. And I think that's good and reinforcing of religion.
Do you think like in whether it's studying Diana or talking to many other people you have where this whole, maybe I'll take it a step farther and say maybe even some of the, like the angel and demon stuff that comes up with it. Do you think it makes you more open to not necessarily like, oh, this religion's right or something like that, but like, all right, maybe I should look at some other stuff that I previously wrote off.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah. Well, I think you expand your ontological world. It like the more you are, I think the best way to think, and I was talking about this with Danny Sheehan too. And like, maybe I'm like way off on all this stuff. So like take this with a grain of salt, but like, I think the best way to think is like be radically open-minded to everything. When you hear something, don't dismiss it a priori. You catalog it as low probability. And then when you just look for corroboration for it, you look for like more and more evidence that it's real. And so I think when you do that with like the alien thing and you look at, all the sort of, this body of like religious evidence, and you can dismiss the stuff around religion and say, it's religious in nature. So like, it's not evidence, but it's like, that's what everybody was like for the last like few thousand years. It's like the idea that like there are like over 4,000 like flood myths or whatever. Like, like there's so many flood myths, and you can like dismiss that out of hand if you're an archaeologist and say Graham Hancock's like an idiot or whatever, or you can just realize that was humanity, and like those myths like hold a lot of validity themselves, and they're historical artifacts. They're not just religious artifacts.
They're also across like every.
They're so disparate. They're uncorrelated. Exactly. And so I think the more your knowledge grows, the more the surface area of your knowledge grows. And if you think of the surface area as like begetting questions, like it's like, I think your questions grow at an exponent of the knowledge that you know, sort of thing. And so, I think when you pull a little Jenga block, or you find out a thing about alternative American history or UFOs or whatever, it just expands your worldview more, and it makes you question sort of everything in a really, I think, healthy way. And then you still have to have guardrail. You still have to be like, yeah, but that's bullshit. That involves lazy thinking and is dumb. And but most people they're sort of like, they don't realize how epistemically like blocked they are.
Yes.
And I think that it would be, I don't know, it'd be awesome if we could change that as a
For
society.
sure, yeah. Listen, across everything we do, all everything. Communication, it would be amazing if people could be more like, wow, that's an interesting idea. How'd you arrive at that?
Yeah.
Rather than, just like, fuck you or yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.